Hello, my name is Professor John Benjamin. This is West Virginia Wesleyan College, and welcome to Web Design. Today we will be going over HTML5 tags and content and how to add structure to a page. All right, let's begin. All right, and this is tutorial 4, so let's go ahead and create a new t4.html file. So now remember, we want to keep everything in our labs file, in our labs folder, and so make sure you have your labs folder selected, and then go ahead and click on the drop-down menu and say New File. All right, and then we're going to call this T4 since it's tutorial 4, and then just simply double-click on that in your Files tab to open up. And the first thing I want to show you is 3 different ways that we can add tags. So you know the first way that we've gone over is simply hand key them. So if I wanted to add an H1 header, I would simply say angle bracket, H1, closing angle bracket, and then Dreamweaver gives me my closing tag, which is great. Another way you can do this is to simply go to the Insert from the File menu on the top here and say Heading. And you can choose an H1 header there. Now the second way, or the third way I should say, that you can do this is your Insert tab, which is a little more convenient. And in your Insert tab, you can insert HTML content and a variety of other options here. So we're just going to stick with HTML. And I want to add a header 2, or an H2, and so I'm going to simply select that and click on H2, and the same thing happens. All right, so for today's exercise, we're going to create a fake marketing or design company. I'm going to do both, so I'm going to call the name of my company Graphic Design Job, and the tagline will be all of your design and marketing needs in one place. Okay, great. That's my H1 and my H2. Now, let's say your client wants you to design this website, but they're a little delayed in getting you the copy. So you know that roughly for the home page, they're going to be writing some marketing copy that's about 100 words. And so you can go ahead and add some lorem ipsum or some placeholder text. So we can do this by using snippets. So if we go to Window and Snippets, there is and tab here that gives us a lot of prefabricated code, and there's a whole variety of it. There's CSS effects and a lot of JavaScript. We're going to be looking at the HTML options here, and then there's HTML snippets, and so we want some lorem ipsum. So if I double click on add lorem ipsum, there I get some lorem ipsum. Now the problem is it doesn't have any tags, so the browser won't know what to do with it. So what we want to do is add some p tags to this. So I'm going to highlight all of that text and then simply go to my Insert menu and hit Paragraph. And then it just adds the closing and ending tags. All right, great. So we have a little structure that we're adding to this web page, but let's add a little more. Most web pages need a header where we can put things like our logo. And so to do that, I can simply put my cursor here at the top, and it's going to ask me for a class. I don't know that yet, so we're just going to leave it header. And then, as usual, it gives me some placeholder text. But in this case, we're just going to delete that. All right, after the header, we should put in a navigation bar of some sort. So that's really important. For every web page needs a navigation bar. So you just click Navigation, and it gives us some placeholder text. But here, let's put in some placeholder nav items. And so I want to have a home and a portfolio, a blog, and contact. Great. There's my nav. All right, then let's add a footer. So let's come down here to the end, right above the closing body tag, hit return, and then scroll down here to footer. And once again, we won't add a class just yet. And for the footer content, I'm going to simply repeat the name of my company, Graphic Design and Marketing by John. And then I'm going to put copyright 2020. All right, there. So we've got a little bit of structure, but one of the things we don't have is we haven't added any styles or properties to any of this content. So that's what we're going to do next by creating a style sheet and then adding color and structure to all of this HTML5 content. One last thing, though, that we want to do before we take that step is we want to create 2 columns. And so with responsive design, on a phone, you want everything to be in one column. But then on a wider screen, like a laptop or a desktop, the line length becomes too long. And so what we want is we want to have more than one column. And so we're going to do that here. We're going to divide this and this text into two columns. All right, so we're going to do that using asides and sections. So I want this information here, H1 and H2, to be an aside. So I'm going to highlight all of it, and just like before, when you select aside, it puts the tags before and after what you've highlighted. All right, and then I'm going to add this paragraph here, and I'm going to put that into a section. So I'm going to highlight it, entering, closing the P tags, and then I'm going to click on section. And then once again that happens. Okay, great. So now we've got to create some styles. So the first thing we'll need to do is to create a style sheet. So let's go to our CSS designer, and you can hit the plus sign or hit add CSS source. We want to create a new one. And then make certain that you're in your labs folder, and we're going to put the CSS file in the CSS folder. That's really critical. The last tutorial we made t3.css, and this time we're going to make our own new one, t4.css. And then go ahead and hit save. Make sure it's in the CSS folder and hit OK. Great, and then that's what the CSS designer did for us, is it linked that file to this file. All right, excellent. So now we can go ahead and add some selectors and properties. So let's go ahead and add some color, some typography to the whole body. So notice when I click on the body tag here, what it does is it highlights everything in my live view, because everything is in the body. So let's go ahead and add some body style. So first thing we need to do is add a selector. So we're going to hit this little plus sign here, and then there it adds a selector that has the name body, because that's where our cursor was. And so now we can go ahead and add properties. So properties are divided up into layout, type, borders, background, and other. So first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and add a background. So we can change the background color here. And just go ahead and select a color. I'm going to add a light gray. Now remember, you don't want your color to be too strong, because the background should be the background and the copy in the images should be the foreground. All right, so I've added a color. You can see it there. And we can change the typography. So if I click on type here, I can say font family. And I can pick a general family here, like maybe I want to use Gill Sans. And then everything there is Gill Sans. Now you can also use Adobe Edge fonts for having a little wider range or more specific typefaces. And to do that, you come down here to Manage Fonts, and then you can select one of these. And so I've got a few already selected. I'll try Actor instead. So when you select one, then you go ahead and you hit Done. And it hasn't changed anything yet, because all it did is added it to your list. So then you have to go back and then come down here and select Actor. And you can see the Adobe symbol is right there. And that comes from the Adobe Web Fonts website. And so you can see here they've added a link to usedgefonts.net. Sometimes this is a little finicky, particularly with our server. So, if you're having a little trouble with that, sometimes it's best to just come and pick one of these here, or maybe a Google font. But, so I'm going to go ahead and just stick to, I think I'm going to choose Lucidagrand. I think that looks nice. All right, great. So we've got some typography changes here and the background change. So quite possibly you want to add an image to your background. So let's see how to go about doing that. So we're going to do that in the body as well. Now just a moment, I want to have a little more, I want to see a little bit more of this tab. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this tab group right here. There we go. All right, so I want to add an image to the background. So we've changed the background color, but here we can add a background image. So first you have to collect an image. And what I've done in Canvas is I provided you with a link to pexels.com. So if you scroll down here, it's www.pexels.com. And if you go to this is a free stock photography website. Now some of the images here do require attribution, so you want to be aware of that. Many of them don't. And so, but what I'd like you to do is type abstract background. And what's really critical when you're looking for a background image is that it has uniform and muted contrast. So for instance, any of these images here, or let's say this one, there's lights and darks all over the place. There's a lot of contrast variation, and so that's going to be very problematic. People are going to have trouble reading your typography, so please do not choose one of these. Here, even this one If you had black type, you wouldn't be able to read the letters that cross over the dark lines. If you had white type, vice versa. So too much contrast variation. You want to select something that's very, very muted. This might work okay. The stars, they have pretty low contrast, although you have to make your typography white. But I'm talking about something that's like this, very low contrast variation, or something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this one, and then you can just go ahead and hit free download. Okay, so how do we bring that image that we downloaded into our website? We're going to come over here, we're going to select body again, go to background, and click on this folder. All right, we're going to navigate to our file, which we downloaded, I downloaded. All right, and here it is, background. I'm going to select open. Now Dreamweaver is going to do this very helpful thing. It's going to say the file is outside the root folder of John Benjamin's website. So this is very critical. If this file does not go into your root folder, it will not go up onto the server and you won't see it, or the people on the web won't see it. So everything has to go into your site folder. And so Dreamweaver is sort of helping you out. And so we're going to say yes. And then we can navigate to our site folder. In this case, we want to make sure everything's in the labs folder. So we're going to go to your site and then to labs. And then here, we want to create a new folder for our images. You can type images, or in many cases, web developers try to keep things short, so they'll just type img. And that's where you want all of your images to go to. So I'm going to hit save, and now Dreamweaver is going to move that file to there. And there you can see it's in my background now. Okay, so we can control the attributes or the properties of that image to a certain degree in our properties palette. So here is the image, and that's where it's located. And so I can go ahead and I can change the background attachment to fixed versus scroll. So fixed actually means it'll stay with the type, where scroll means you can scroll the text and images and the background will move. Well, the text will move, the background will stay the same. And background position and size. Background size, I want it to cover. That's what I was looking for. And now what will happen is with background size to cover, no matter what size my screen is, or the person viewing my screen, the image will adjust to that size. Okay, so we can take a look at this on our computer. It's not up on the server yet. And to do that, we can click on this little preview button down here. And I'm going to choose my preferred web browser, which is Chrome. And there you have it. And now that's everything I have. My typeface is there. And then you can see that my image is adjusting to the width of my screen. All right. Great. Let's go back to Dreamweaver. Okay, so let's add some more parameters. So we've changed things to the whole body, but let's make some more specific changes. Okay, so the first change that I'm going to make is to the footer. So let's go down to the footer. Put our cursor there, and then I'm going to move up here to selector, and it's going to create a selector based on the tags in their hierarchy. So it chose everything in the body and then the footer inside the body. And so that's not really necessary. So we can simply just delete body and just say footer. But we can be more specific if we want to. Okay, so with my footer, it's pretty basic. So I'm going to change some parameters. I'm going to change the background color. Let's make that a dark gray. And now let's go to layout and let's change the padding. So I'm going to go and add a lot of padding. So I'm going to go ahead and add 50 pixels. And when I do the shorthand up here, that just adds it to all the sides for you at once. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I think I also want my type centered. I'll go back to the type tool here and center the type. And I think that's all I want to do for my footer. Oh no, one thing. I want to remove the float. I want it to always set to the bottom. And so what I want to have happen is I go up here to layout. I want the float to be removed. I want to clear both left and right floats, so that way it always goes to the bottom. Now, one of the things that you'll notice here in the properties palette, if you select a property, it will turn bold. You can see that, and if you deselect it, it'll unbold it. So we want to make sure that this one is selected. Okay, great. That's our footer. Let's go ahead and I think the next thing we'll do is add a logo to the header. All right, so let's go up to the header, put our cursor between the two header tags, and let's insert an image. Now there's two ways we could do that. We can insert an image here in HTML. I can find it. Rollover image. Or I think the other way to do it is to simply just go here to insert an image. All right, and once again, in Canvas, if you scroll down, I provided you a logo right here. So you can click on this file and download it. And once it's downloaded, you can go ahead and select it from your Downloads folder, hit Open, and once again, Dreamweaver is going to ask you to put it in the root folder. And you're always going to say yes. Navigate to that root folder. And here's the image file, and we're going to set it in there. And there's the logo. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to create two columns. I want two columns that will appear as one column on a phone and two columns on a wider screen. Because it's important to remember that as text line length increases, if you take a look here, like so, it becomes very difficult to read. You can't read this entire line of text. It's hard for the eye to come back and find the next line. And so that's why we want text to be really between 8 and 12 words per line. And so what I want to do is I want it to look like this on a phone, but here I want to have it be in two columns. Okay, so let's do that using our aside and our section. So I'm going to start with the aside. I'm going to come over to my CSS designer, and I'm going to go ahead and add a selector. Now I want this to be a class. I may have many asides on this web page, so I want to apply a class to this one particular aside, not all the aside tags, but just to this one specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say dot aside and left, because I want this to be on the left. Now the period is the indicator that this is going to be a class. So that's why I put that period there, and you'll see how that works in just a moment. All right, so I want this information here in my aside to go over to the left. I want it to float left and be a little bit not as wide. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So we want to float to the left. I'm going to select that from float. And then up on here for width, I'm going to make it only 30%. Okay. Now nothing's happened because I haven't told the tag here what the class is. So we have the parameters set in the selector, but it's not assigned to this tag. So to do so, I'm going to put my cursor right before the closing angle bracket, hit spacebar, type C for class, and the word class pops up. I'm going to select it. And then you can already see there, my class is ready for me because I put the period there. And so there it is, aside class is aside left. And then you can see that it's moved over to the left. All right, so now let's do something similar to the section. So here I'm going to put my cursor in the tag, create a new selector. I'm going to call this one section right. Now it's very important that you key all of your letters the same. So if you're not going to use spaces or you're going to use upper or lower case in this case, it always has to be the same. So be very watchful of how you type. So there is section right. And for this one, I want the width to be 60%. Right, and I want it to float to the right. And let's see how that looks. So now, of course, we don't see any change here yet because we haven't applied the section class. So if I hit spacebar, type C for class, navigate to class, hit enter, and there it is, section right is all ready for us. And then it applies those properties because we assign the class. Okay, so we can assign a few more properties to that aside if we want. So I can come back here to section right, and I can change other properties, other parameters. So let's say I want to change the background color. So we've changed the background color before and added an image, but you can also give the background a gradient by clicking here. And so I'm going to change the gradient here to maybe a nice light gray to a white. And then there you can see I've added a background to it. Now, unfortunately, though, I need to add some more parameters because you can see how that box is running right up to the type. So we need to add some padding. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come up here to Layout, scroll down to Padding, and I think I'll just give it right and left padding, about 10 pixels. Great, and there you can see it's padded. Now I can also go down to the border section here, and I can round out the corners if I like. So let's say I want to round them out to 10. There we go. I've got nice rounded corners. Very cool. All right, so now that we've got a little structure here, it's looking like a real web page. We need to make a website. So we have these navigation items here, but they don't go anywhere. So we're going to have to hyperlink those. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so here we have in the nav, home, portfolio, blog, and contact. So what we need to do is, because HTML5 prefers that navigations are in an unordered list, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to select that, all of the items there, and we're going to come to our insert, and we're just going to simply click on unordered list, and that adds the tags before and after. Now every unordered list needs list items, so I'm going to select home and click on list item. And I'll do the same thing to portfolio and blog and contact. Great. And it's looking a little messy here, so let's go and just go to edit, code, and apply source formatting. There, that looks a little better. Okay, so now we need to add hyperlinks. What we want to have happen is eventually in this tutorial, we're going to create 3 more pages. So we have our home page, and then we're going to have 3 subsequent pages. And we want each of these to link to those pages so that way we can navigate between the pages. So we'll have to create hyperlinks to do that. All right, so how do we create a hyperlink again? We just simply highlight the text we want to link and say insert and hyperlink right here. All right, and once again, I'm going to navigate here to that page, and I want this to navigate to my t4.html file. That is going to be the home. So I'm just going to go ahead and navigate to that, locate it, select it, and hit open. And then the target, I want it to be self. And then the title will be home. Okay, great. And then that code is written for me. So now I'm going to take a moment to switch to horizontal so you can see the full line of code. And you can see the benefit of horizontal. You can see that whole line, line 14, all together. All right. And what we can do now is, rather than go through that whole process for these 3, which we actually can't because these pages don't exist yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just simply copy this code right here. And I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it before portfolio, before blog, and before contact. Now the other part I need to paste is the closing tag. So I need that /a. I have to put that at the end of each word. Okay, great. And now you can see that they're all hyperlinked. Now, fortunately, they all go to the same place and they all have the same title. So let's go ahead and change the title. Excellent. And now let's change their final location of their link. So right now, they're all going to go to the home page. So eventually, we're going to create these 3 pages, but I'm going to go ahead and give them the names now. So I want this one to be portfolio, so I'm just going to call it T4 Port. The next one is for blog, so T4 Blog. And the next one is going to be contact, so T4 CONT. All right, great. So now all of those will go to these pages eventually. But now we want to go ahead and add some properties, some look, some style to these buttons. Right now, they're just ordinary hyperlinks that look like bullets. And so let's go ahead and do that. So that's going to take several levels because we can now add properties to the nav, to the unordered list, to the list items, and to the hyperlink. So there's going to be a cast. All right, so the first selector that we're going to add is to the nav. All right, so we're going to start here, then we're going to work our way down. So go ahead and put your cursor in the nav, go back to your designer, you can select your style sheet, and create a new selector. All right, but we don't want that. We want to create a class, so I'm going to call this one dot navigation. And I'm going to add simply a background color to that. I want to have a nice bar of color. So I'm going to make the background color just a nice light gray. Now, once again, we haven't seen any change because I haven't added the class here. So I'm going to put the cursor there, type C for class, and there is my navigation class, and voila, it's there. Great. All right, so now we're going to add some properties to the unordered list. So we're going to come back up here, create a new selector, and this one we're going to call dot nav list. And what we want to do is get rid of the bullets first. So we are going to go here and change the we're going to change the list style to none. All right, we're going to remove the padding, any padding from here. So we're just going to put in the shorthand 0 pixels for padding and margin. And lastly, we're going to go all the way to the bottom here to more. We're going to type in overflow. And then we're going to make it hidden. All right, great. And now nothing is happening here because we've got to come here to our UL and add this class. And nav list is what we want to add. All right, got rid of the bullets. All right, now we're going to go ahead and create a new style for the list item. So I'm going to put my cursor in the LI, create a new selector, and this one I want to call .nav list item, because that's what it is. It's a list item. So I'm going to differentiate that. Okay, and so let's add some properties to the list item. And what we want these to do is float left. All right, so first we're going to go to layout and scroll down to float left. Okay, and that's all we want to do there. But we have to add that class. So again, put my cursor in, hit space, select class, and look for nav list item. And there we go. Now, something different happened here. It only applied the class to this list item. You have 4 list items. Now, before we only had to apply it here because you only have one unordered list. But in this case, we've got to apply it each time. And so now you can come down and manually do it, type class, and go to nav list item. Or you can simply copy this code right here, right to the quotation mark, and then paste it in. And there you have it. All right, and so that's all set up. But we're not quite finished because we want them to look a little more like buttons. We want them to be interactive. So we're going to have to do a couple of things to the link itself. So what we're going to do next is we're going to put our cursor here in the A. Come up here and create a new selector. And we're going to get rid of .nav list. So this is .nav list item A. All right. And we are going to add a few features here. So the first one is we are going to change the display to block. So right here under layout, I'm going to change that to block. Text decoration, we are going to change to none. And then we're going to add some padding and some text color. So let's go here up to padding. I'm just going to add 10 pixels all around. And let's go ahead and give it a background color. A bit lighter gray. There we go. All right, so things are looking a little bit more like a regular nav bar. The last thing we need to do is just add a hover so that when we scroll over it, it'll change color. Okay, so that's the last thing we'll do. With your cursor in the A here once again, we're going to go ahead and make a new selector. And now this one, we're going to call .nav list item A : hover. And you can see that pops right up there for you. Great. And for the hover, we're going to just change the text color. We want a little signal and the background color. So I'm going to change the background color to, we'll just make it pure white. And then let's change the text color to black. Okay, and then that should be a roll over there. Great. All right, and so now one of the things I want to point out to you before we go ahead and make the 4 web pages and create an actual website is I want to indicate really what's going on over here. And this is just a code writing palette, if you will. So if you, first of all, hit File and Save All, so that way everything gets saved, and then you can click on your CSS file right here. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to change my view to split vertically. Here's my site, and here, because I have my CSS selected, is my styles, my CSS. And so here, again, is the selector, and then here is the properties. It's all just hand-keyed, and you can hand-key it too if you know what you want to do. But this properties panel helps you write this code. So it helps you, one, to avoid errors, and it just helps it to be just a little more a drag and drop, if you will. So just wanted to point that out. You can make any changes in here. You can type in a new typeface. You can type in a new color. All of this can be hand-keyed. All right, great. So I'm going to go back to my source code right there. All right. And so now what we want to do is we want to create an actual website. So we have this one page. We have a navigation. But unfortunately, it doesn't really go anywhere because these files haven't been created yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create those. So we're going to go back to our Files tab. And here we have T4, the file we're working on. And what we simply want to do is duplicate it. So you can right-click on that, or you can click in the drop-down menu here, and you can say Edit and Duplicate. All right, and then I'm just going to do that 2 more times. And then we need to change the names of these files now to the names that we gave them. T4 port, T4 blog, and T4 conf. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So to select it, go to the drop-down menu, and File Rename. And I'm just going to say T4 port. And go to the next one, File Rename, T4 blog. And to the next one, File Rename, T4 contact. Okay, great. And so those are all there. We can hit File and Save All. Last step before we put this up onto the server is we've got to differentiate those 3 pages. So let's go ahead and open them up and differentiate them so when we click on them, we know that we're on a new page. So I'm going to go ahead and double-click on Blog. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this H1 to Blog. All right, and then I'm going to open up Contact. And again, I'm going to change this H1 header to Contact. And lastly, to Portfolio. And I'm going to change this H1 header here to Portfolio. And you should change the title of each of them as well. All right, so we're going to say File and Save All. And don't forget to go to your index and add the assignment or the tutorial today, add that, and then link that to labst4.html. Okay, so make sure you always do that at the end of every assignment. And then once it's saved, go ahead and select your file and put. All right, and then once your site is up there, you should have your website all looking great. And you should be able to click on Home, Portfolio, and then it goes to your portfolio, blog, and you can see it goes to the blog, and contact. And there you have 4 web pages and a home page and a fully functioning nav bar. So great, and good luck on your assignment. Thanks for joining me.